Alright, so we're dropping in. It's an elimination map. Just assessing the situation, seeing where our team's at and where the enemy's at. I accidentally drop a little bit, waste a little energy, but I recover it back, so it's not a big deal. I see that the enemy's all in the middle. I put my shield on Serenith, and I get away from the orbital because they have an enemy Serenith. I drop down to our team's Welkin, try to hug him a little bit in case he goes close for a kill. But then I see some missiles coming my way, so I dodge and evade. I get a little closer to see if he has any visuals, then I see the enemy all clustered up, so I drop a wall on Stego, which does annoy and harass him a little bit. Yes, dropping the wall on the Stego does do damage, but it also plays a little psychological game with him and shows that, hey, there's an enemy Pinaka that hard counters a Stego up close. Usually the enemy Stego would dodge the wall and try to avoid it, and so his teammates would have to either move with him or separate, and if the wall were to miss, then it would cause a separation within the cluster of enemies, causing them to move. Throwing the wall on the Stego also played a different psychological role of, hey, this Stego now has to consider, if he's in turret form, am I going to get walled? And so I do occupy some of his thought processing power in that sense, and that's more of a psychological aspect of the game. That's if he's paying attention and doing all that stuff, so this is just some sort of meta-analysis commentary on my ideas for why I did what I did. I allow myself to drop because my energy is low, so I want to recover that. I put my emergency support drone on Welkin, and then I get bursted from the back by the Elyseness. I'm not really worried. I do hide behind this orange pillar, and then he drops aggro. I see that our Stellaris is weak, so I go towards him. So usually the strategy for the PvP elimination maps is that a Stellaris by himself can go to the healing device and heal himself when he's invis. That's usually his primary method of getting heals. He's getting targeted, and I can do the healing. So I'm trying to rush towards him and heal him because he's low health, but he keeps running away, and then he gets bursted and dies. Shortly thereafter, a Welkin starts targeting me, and I try to jump on top of our friendly Welkin's box so I can evade him. But then I run out of energy and get caught in a corner. So it takes energy to evade a melee stagger when you're staggered by any melee that hits you with melee. So what that means is if I don't have any energy, I'm going to die. I'm just going to be perma-stunned and staggered until the enemy melee runs out of energy himself. So what I do is I turn around because I have my back against the wall. He can't push me any further, and I throw down a wall in hopes that it either protects me and blocks me or he eats it. In this case, he eats it. And the wall bypasses fluid armor and shields, so he takes about a third of his health and it staggers him. He misses his box but gets cornered. He deactivates the box before I can land my wall on him, but I do put a whole bunch of walls down, enough for me to create a maze and juke him around it. So now it's just like a juking minigame where I just avoid the Welkin and we're playing a game of tag. I see that our friendly Welkin's weak, and so I dive towards him to increase our chances of survival because I can provide the heals and he can tank for me. I tether hug to our friendly Welkin, which helps me get away, and then I take my emergency support drone off me and put it on our friendly Welkin and then start blasting with a splitter as I'm healing him with the tether, and we do a lot of damage. I get boxed in with the Welkin, which is good because the box does block the tether heal ability, my primary fire, so it's actually more preferred in that case that I was boxed in with my friendly Welkin so I can heal him with both my emergency support drone and my tether heal. It is to note that the enemy Welkin's box does block me from healing from the outside, so being on the inside actually allows me to heal my friendly Welkin, and the enemy Welkin didn't use his DF jammer on my friendly Welkin, which would have removed my emergency support drone on him, and also any other healing drones that I had. So now it's like a little mini game where I have to try to not break the tether. What I've noticed with the tether is that if any object or enemy goes in front between you and whatever you're trying to tether heal, it breaks the tether, but not if allies do. You can also tether heal from outside a friendly Welkin's box. At this point, I start shooting and blasting with a splitter, and that kills the enemy Welkin. I take some time hiding behind my teammates under cover as I heal my health up to full health. I see our friendly Welkin on the side, chasing a Serenith, but it runs away. I keep healing myself, and then we have a moment of downtime, so I check the team's health. I see Narukami's really low, so I start rushing in, trying to find her on the map, and I go over there and heal, lay down some repair drones, and heal her a lot. After I get her up to a good amount of health, I check around, and I see that our Tricera is a little low, so I go rush towards him to heal him. I retract my emergency support drone, and then put it on the Tricera, I also start blasting with my splitter because 9 times out of 10, if Tricera is shooting at something, that means that the enemy is probably in range of his miniguns, which also means that they're in range of the splitter. At this point I notice the blue stego smoke, and I have some walls that I could use, so I go try to chase a little bit, but then I focus back on the team for healing. I see the Narcom is a little low, so I wait for my tether heal to pop up, and then I use it, but then she breaks the tether heal. Silly goose. Here's where I swap off my heals. I retract my emergency support drone from Tricera and then place it on Narukami to do distant healing, and then focus on using my tether heal on Tricera because it's easier to tether heal Tricera or a Stego at any of those turrets than it is a mobile mech that keeps on running around and dodging or jumping. After the Narukami is fully healed, I took the emergency support drone back and put it on Tricera. I'm getting shot at by the enemy Tricera, so I sort of use our Tricera as a meat shield as I heal him. I'm putting down walls to block the enemy Tricera's attack, so our Tricera doesn't take a lot of damage. I do a whole bunch of juking and evading de-armored Alisness, and I can effectively kill him if he slows down. So I risk it for a little bit, but then I focus back on healing because it's a higher priority for me to do my job well. Normally you wouldn't really challenge an Alisness, even de-armored, but this is an elimination, so technically killing the enemy is the objective. If you notice that I sort of juke around our Tricera, that's because I don't want to get hit, as I don't have any fluid armor and shields, and I'm basically using our Tricera and box juking around him as a meat shield. I noticed that there's an enemy Stego who's out of position deep in our territory because he's trying to confirm the kill on our Tricera, so I throw down some walls to punish him, and then I do a little chase. I think what I could have done better here is I have 12 salvos in my splitter. I should have been shooting a lot more here, looking back. But you know, it was pretty chaotic. I was trying to avoid getting backstabbed by an Alisness like 3 or 4 times, so understandable, right? So here I'm throwing walls and chasing the Stego, trying to get the last kill to win the round. It does make him run away, which is okay, because the more time that he spends running away is the more time he's not in turret form or doing damage to our teammates. Since we only need one more kill to win, our entire team is pretty much playing aggressive. I see that I have my splitter on my Welkin here, and then he's going in for the kill. We were pinging the Stego and targeting him the whole time, so we wanted to close the distance. And then I started blasting while the Welkin was engaged with the Stego, and that helped us win the game. Alright, so round 2 is starting, and usually everyone just sort of looks around and makes decisions on what they want to do. Especially for me as a healer, I just kind of pay attention to what the team is and what the team's doing. Solo queue, not a lot of people are talking, so I'm just going to hug the Tricera. I see our Welkin did dive into the enemy territory. This is another important thing to note, that I saw the enemy Welkin put up his box, and I have a splitter. So I started shooting with my splitter, and that usually melts the Welkin's box in about 2 seconds-ish, and that helps free up our Welkin. So I throw down a wall trying to block enemy advance towards me, and then I throw down another wall to block the Tricera and Stego that are trying to shoot at our Welkin. Our Welkin did jump off and regretted his decision to dive headfirst into the enemy team, and he's really low and weak, so I go over trying to heal him. I'm just trying to get really close to him so I can get the tether heal off. It does an instant heal on the tether heal left click, and then it does health regen over time. After he's healed enough, I let my emergency support drone do the rest of the healing as I focus on the Tricera. I put my emergency support drone on the Welkin. I start blasting a little because I don't know what he's looking at, but hopefully it's an enemy. I saw that Narukami needed a little bit of heal, so I threw my emergency support drone on her and then took cover behind buildings to avoid the Welkin and the Falcon obstructing their fire control systems. I see that our Welkin's engaging into a battle, so I throw my emergency support drone on him and start blasting in close range. He boxes, I throw down a wall, it gets a kill. It's good for us. I get hit by an Alisness and then dodge and juke to the right and then go towards the Stellaris to give him heals because he's a higher priority of needing heals as he's low health. Stellaris and Welkin box the Stego. I start blasting, trying to get some shots in, but the Stellaris isn't the ideal person to start blasting on because it can interrupt his invis. So I take the emergency support drone back and I try to attack the Stego. Due to the smoke, I give up chase a little bit and throw down a wall on the Tricera, which gets the kill. And then we focus back on the Stego. Now he's all by himself and he's pretty much out of position. And that kills him. Their Aleseness dived to try to save the Stego, but then got caught in a Welkin box, and I put my emergency support drone on the Welkin and started blasting. I thought that was the enemy Tricera, but then I realized his color scheme was our team's Tricera, so it was actually a Serenith grappling him and making him change teams. I focus on healing him just to prevent him from dying, but I get hit by a Welkin. I juke right, forward, and then backwards in order to confuse the Welkin. And then I focus my emergency support drone on healing Tricera to keep him alive and healthy, because he can tank a lot of damage and I want him alive. Here I see the enemy Welkin's box, and then I recall my emergency support drone with my splitter and start blasting to melt the box. That way the melee stagger drones don't deal damage to our friendly Welkin, and it also doesn't stagger him, allowing him to do more damage and not be staggered. I start shooting a little bit with my splitter and emergency support drone, and then I put it on our friendly Welkin and start shooting, and that helps us to kill the enemy Welkin. Yeah, so that was the game, and you know, it could have went differently if they had a healer or if they had a Panther that would focus me only, because the Aleseness didn't do enough to kill me. Maybe that's a skill difference, or maybe that was just a bad matchup on his part. Overall, I think the reason why I got MVP is because of my heals, lots of heals, and also damage and walls. I was lucky enough to get some walls off, which do a lot of damage. Additionally, I had 0 deaths that game, so that really helps the score when you're trying to get those MVPs or whatever. I think the big thing is the Stegos and Triceras were always focused on something else, so the enemy Stego and Tricera just basically ate walls from me because they didn't want to focus me for whatever reason, so I just threw down walls and they ate them. Or they had to get out of their turret form and then be met with melee resistance, and that staggers them and then puts them in a bad position. So overall, I think our team just prioed the right targets and stayed alive the longest. And our Narukami did fairly good second half, not getting into a lot of trouble, keeping the Falcon at bay and occupied. Because if the enemy Falcon was focused on me, which, I mean, in theory, if the Falcon was really, really good, they could take out the Narukami and then go for me, and that would be the priority. But I guess there wasn't enough of a skill difference there for the Falcon to overtake and change the tide of the battle, because I really never once worried about the Falcon this game, so there was no pressure from the Falcon on their team, to me at least. So I don't have the replay features for other people in the current build of the game, so I don't know exactly what everyone else did. I'm just going to guess that our Narukami and our Stellaris targeted the Falcon on their team in order to not like have to worry about the Falcon, and then their Aleseness probably focused more on trying to take out the Stellaris like he did in the very beginning of the first half. He also tried a lot to try to take me out the second half of the first half, I guess. But he wasn't really successful there. So another thing is we had a Welkin and they had a Welkin, and so our Welkins would fight, but the moment there's a healer or a 2v1, it favors the Welkin with the more team or healers on their side. So that was another big difference, is not having that healer. And that Welkin basically helped, save me from getting attacked. I was also hugging the Welkin and Tricera a lot, keeping them as tanks, keeping them as alive so they can keep tanking. The Tricera did die a couple times, and that's not good. And also our Welkin didn't die at once, so I kept him alive a lot because he was a very aggressive Welkin. So if I just put my emergency support drone on him and just fired off my splitter, it does a lot of damage, and that's all I need from an aggressive Welkin, is just for them to be in melee range or looking at the general direction, and then I do good damage. I didn't really have to worry much about their Serenith because they weren't targeting me the whole time. It would have been a little bit of a different game if the Serenith was targeting me, but we also had a Serenith on our team, and our Serenith was probably doing a lot better because they had 2 turrets, vice our 1 turret. Because Serenith does have the orbital artillery, which does harass a lot on turrets like Stego or Tricera. So their Serenith couldn't do as much damage as our Serenith, and we also had a Stellaris who probably harassed both the Falcon and the Serenith, preventing them from doing too much. Yeah, so that was the recap of the game, and that's my in-depth analysis as well as my thoughts and theories. Let me know, if this is like the right speed, the right edits, all that stuff, all that jazz. Because I was also thinking about experimenting with, like, what if I played the video in like 0.5 second speed? That way I can just talk while it's going instead of having to do crazy amounts of edits. But also, like, is the pause feature or the freeze frame and then adding the pause as well as the notes and arrows, is that helpful enough? Some people just want to watch gameplay. This is more of like an analysis, a little more than commentary. But if it's up your alley, let me know. Give me a comment on if this is the right direction for the kind of content that you're looking for or whatever. I don't know a lot of people playing Pinaka and then showing you like, crazy stuff, because usually people play a lot of the DPS heavy strikers and they show you basically them murking a whole bunch of people with really fast TTKs or time to kills. Pinaka's not that. Yeah, Pinaka's keeping the team alive, trying to keep themselves alive, because I'm dodging left and right with any melees that try to kill me, and I'm doing all sorts of things like making mazes or boxes. But yeah, just give me a like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want, and then yeah, enjoy life. Yeah, it's a game at the end of the day.